Welcome to Emotional Support Animal Show number 10, when we've got Jannifer and Amani. In this episode, we sit down with our special guest, Jannifer, who you can see on the screen, to discuss her emotional support animal, ESA, Amani. Jannifer opens up about her personal journey with Amani, sharing how having an emotional support animal has profoundly transformed her daily life by providing essential comfort and stability. We explore the reasons why Jannifer's decision to get an ESA and how Amani has been embraced within her local community if she's been outside. This heartfelt episode highlights the powerful impact of ESAs on individuals' lives, celebrating the compassion, comfort, and deep connections they foster. If you have an emotional support animal and are eager to share your personal story, we'd be delighted to hear from you. Get in touch with us about appearing as a guest on an upcoming episode. And don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends on social media to help raise awareness about the crucial role emotional support animals play in providing comfort and support. And lastly, all opinions on this show are my own, as I'm a volunteer that just hosts a show. So let's get on with it. Hello, Jannifer.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's great for you to be here. Okay, can you start by introducing yourself and telling us a bit about your emotional support animal? What kind of animal do you have and what is their name?
So I'm Jannifer. I grew up in South Africa and moved back to the UK 20 years ago. Beginning of 2018, I had a very difficult time and a severe mental health crisis. And that took me on a bit of a journey. And I had a couple of cats during that time who were, great, gave me a reason to get out of bed in the mornings. They needed looking after. But sadly, in 2019, they had to be rehomed. And again, life was just crazy. Didn't realize how much I was missing them until life started to settle back down again. And so I chatted to my doctor about getting her support with my landlords at the time to be able to have a pet. And that was towards the end of 2019, at which point I signed up to climb Kilimanjaro at the beginning of 2020. So waited until I got back from that before I actually got Amani. So Amani is a ragdoll. I got her when she was 8 weeks old. And I had to shield through the first lockdown because I have fibromyalgia. And so my social anxiety became profoundly worse during that particular time period. And knowing I was getting Amani at the end of the lockdown was what got me through it. And within the first few days of having Amani, my life was completely transformed. It was amazing just having that other living being in my proximity. Just made a huge difference to my mental health.
So what led you to decide that you needed an emotional support animal? Was there a specific moment or reason?
Yeah, so as I said, towards the end of 2019, I started to realize how much I was missing having an animal. And didn't realize just the impact that having an animal in my life had previously. Looking into it and doing research around it, I know I've always sort of known about assistance dogs, guide dogs, dogs for the deaf, and so on. And I'd seen dogs for good and the tasks that the dogs and so on can do. But I wasn't at a point where I needed a task-based assistance animal, because I still do a lot of things for myself. It was just more the company and the comfort of having another being in close proximity. I lived on my own, and an animal does give you sort of unconditional love and support. So I realized that it was missing my cats. I hadn't probably processed through the loss of having to give them up and rehome them. I was homeless for a week at the beginning of 2019, and looking for new properties with animals was obviously really difficult. And I didn't even know about the emotional support animal registry, let alone the rights and things that I could actually have had that based on my mental health and needing that support. But once I realized that, and I had the support of my doctor doing the research, I found the Emotional Support Animal Registry website, and I was like, yep, this, I'll definitely be doing this. That was then, and then that started the research into the type of cat I wanted to get, because I have fibromyalgia, my energy levels can fluctuate hour to hour, let alone day to day, and I couldn't guarantee that I would have the energy to walk a dog once a day, never mind twice, never mind every day. And so a cat suits my life a lot easier. They're a lot easier to look after and care for, and they don't always need to go out. But also I wanted to make sure that I got the right temperament of a cat that would suit going out if, as I intended to be able to do. And so ragdolls, Amani, as I said, is a ragdoll. Ragdolls are a very relaxed, chilled breed of cat. They're known as the floppy cats because when you pick them up, they just tend to hang. And she's been amazing. They love human company. And so, she loves to be close to me. As you can see, she's settled quite nicely behind me here. And yeah, she's great. Love her.
How has having an emotional support animal impacted your day-to-day life and mental well-being?
So, as I said, I developed quite severe social anxiety during lockdown. It started to show, having been diagnosed with fibromyalgia at the age of 37, relatively young age, and then, needing to start using mobility aids and things like that. I started to feel a bit judged by people. To look at me, you wouldn't think there's anything wrong with me physically. And so I would panic, I would have anxiety, or I'd have panic attacks when I was out. I'd be constantly worried, what would happen if my body decided that it wasn't going to cooperate. And it just made going out really, really difficult. And then the pandemic hit. And I shielded, I bubbled alone, and so that was awful. And the agoraphobia was particularly bad with that. So having Amani meant that if I went out, I was like, if people were looking at me, they're looking at the cat because it's unusual to see a cat out and about. And I could handle that. Like, people were looking at me, but they weren't looking at me, but they were looking at Amani. And before I developed social anxiety, I was a very social person. I loved going out. I didn't have a problem going into places where I didn't know people. I could network. I was an accountant for many years. So networking and all of that sort of thing was kind of my jam. And then the social anxiety hit and I couldn't do those things anymore. And so having Amani became a great icebreaker for starting conversations and meeting people. And then of course it became an educational tool as well, because people associate dogs more with being support and assistance animals. And so that, the conversation's always, oh, it's a cat. I didn't know cats could do that. And yeah, so that's been great because it's opened up my world a little bit more. And I feel like I can go out by myself because Amani's with me. If I didn't have Amani, I would effectively be housebound because I wouldn't be able to go anywhere.
Could you share a particular story or instance where your emotional support animal provided comfort or support during a really challenging time?
This part of lockdown and pretty much ever since, Amani is there. She's a constant comfort. She is very attuned to me emotionally. I haven't actually trained this in her. She's just instinctively picked it up. But she will pick up when I'm starting to get anxious, even before I realize I'm getting anxious. And she'll meow, or she will paw at me. And just that little action of bringing my attention to her will just bring me back into the moment. I've had I've only had one instance of being excluded from a premises. Most places are really accepting and understanding of, the Equality Act and the rights of people with mental health issues. A little more difficult sometimes because she's a cat, but it's but yeah, as I say, there's been so many instances. Literally every day she's just there, and it'll either be right next to me in close proximity as she is now, or she'll come and lie on my chest when I'm having a particularly bad time, and she'll just sit there anywhere between 5 minutes and half an hour, and just that weight of her will just help to ground me and center me.
What are some of the biggest benefits you've experienced since getting your emotional support animal?
Being able to go out, being able to get out of the house and go and do my grocery shopping, to get out of the house and go and visit a coffee shop, or to do different things, going to the doctor even. Just having her with me means that I can do things. I sometimes have to plan a little bit, obviously, because having a cat and making sure that she's safe, that she's got a safe space to be in when we're out, that I can obviously keep her protected. I have an animal stroller for her that has a hood that completely closes her in. So when I do my grocery shopping, she's not causing any health issues, in the grocery stores and so on. And then, as I say, just the fact that when I'm then out, she's opening up conversations. And, some of my really good friends that I have now are because I started going out and meeting people, and, they saw Amani and loved it.
I was just smiling then when you said health issues in the supermarket. And I was just thinking, I've seen a lot of humans that probably more dirty and horrible than actually the animals that go in there.
Yeah, but no, exactly.
Yeah. Have you encountered any challenges or obstacles with having an emotional support animal in, especially in public places or specific establishments?
Yeah. So two come to mind. One in 2022, with a local hall that also sort of acts as a cinema. I had wanted to go. I had gone to see a film, and they'd made the reasonable adjustment, and they'd allowed us in. Amani was in her stroller, closed in, didn't cause a ruckus. They then asked, said the next time I came to follow, to email their box office so that I could get the accessible seating and so on, which I did. And on that, when I'd followed their processes, they then said, no, we won't allow animals, and they actually won't allow any support or assistance animals at all. I went on BBC South Today, wrote to the local newspaper, and they still wouldn't change their position on it. And sadly, because it was a charity, they effectively get around it or get out of it by saying that it would have a negative financial impact on their establishment, especially because somebody might have an allergic reaction to a cat. I didn't know, I didn't realize this at the time, or I didn't think about it at the time, and by the time I did, it was too late. But this particular organization sold peanut M&Ms.
Yeah, okay.
So you're kind of like, well, if you're playing the allergy card, then you shouldn't be selling anything that could be a potential allergy risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, and then more recently, I went out to dinner to a local restaurant. And it wasn't the fact that they didn't want to allow Amani, it was more their approach to the situation that upset me. But they came over, they basically walked in with Amani in her stroller, they sat us, they got us to our table and let us sit down. And then the manager came over and was instantly, we don't allow animals in the restaurant. I'm like, well, actually, you kind of have to, because she's my emotional support animal. Well, we don't allow emotional support animals because they're not trained. Now, Amani, you can see, is, I understand she's at home, so she is going to be a little, on her
Is she going to break out of the stroller and start attacking people?
But she doesn't. She literally.
No, I'm being sarcastic.
Right?
It's just like, yeah.
She was literally, as she is here right now, she was asleep, not making a noise. So I said, well, in actual fact, Amani is medically prescribed. My doctor has prescribed her for my mental health. If you exclude, I have to have her with me. If you exclude Amani, you exclude me. And if you exclude me, that is basically discrimination, and you will likely find yourself on the end of a lawsuit. Oh! Suddenly, then they change it. Well, we'll let you stay on this occasion. It really actually upset me and really rattled me, because I hadn't had that in a very long time. Most people are very much like, oh, emotional support, great, lovely, she's welcome. And then, if there is an issue or somebody's allergic or whatever, we'll have that conversation. And if it's a problem, I will close Amani in, because as much as I expect, and organizations and businesses are supposed to make reasonable adjustments for us, I also don't want to make it uncomfortable for other people. So I will make adjustments where necessary too. And we actually ended up leaving. We didn't actually eat, and we left. And actually that comes back to your particular instance. This one, and literally I just picked Amani up and held her, and she literally buried herself into me until I'd kind of calmed down and regulated. And then we just went off to another pub. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of education that needs to happen. There's a lot of misunderstanding around what emotional support animals do for people. But I also know that there are people who will be like, well, the animal's is emotional support, but it runs riot and, isn't under control. And you're kind of like, well, no, stop ruining it for the rest of us, And I know there's no legal requirement for us to have any sort of registration or documentation, but I'm a big advocate for that. I think that we should be putting that forward. We should be regulated a little bit more. There needs to be that database of we've gone through checks and balances. And even if it is, home training that's happening, I would be all for some sort of assessment being done, like an independent assessment being done to say, yes, this animal is under control and, is trained and isn't going to, wreak havoc and tear curtains and, jump on tables and eat customers' food sort of thing. So, yeah.
Well, as you said, the registry actually won't register unless you've got a medical document, and those medical documents actually go to a medical company, and they check that it's a valid reason. They also check if the person that wrote it, the medical professional, actually exists, because some people have put in documents where they've just written them themselves and said Dr. John or whatever,
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there needs to be more of that. Even assistance dogs don't actually have a formal registry the way that emotional support. So the ESA organization is actually ahead of the curve a little bit in that regard.
Well, that's why there's a lot of councils, not all of them, but there's a lot of councils and universities that use this service because they know they check the medical stuff out and it's a valid reason to have one.
Yeah.
Of course, some people can go to a doctor and say, write me a letter, and they'll write them a letter. So there's always some sort of abuse, but generally, there's a lot of checks on there. Do you feel that having an emotional support animal has helped you connect with people in your community, or has it affected your social life?
It's definitely helped me connect. It's definitely opened up my social life a lot more, because I'm able to go to places and, obviously the first little while, both Amani and I are a little bit on edge. But once we both start to feel more comfortable, and especially once she starts to feel more comfortable, I do a weekly pub quiz now on a Sunday, and Amani is kind of the unofficial mascot of the pub. And everybody sort of knows her, and we sort of get there, she gets parked off in her little corner and she sleeps. She's kind of like, yeah, you're good, mum. When I go to my therapy sessions, when I go for any of my sort of treatments that I need, she's kind of like, right, okay, you've got an hour of self-care, there you go. You're the beautician's problem for an hour, I'm going to sleep. And, she's really, really good at that. She's a cat. She likes to explore. And I will let her do that within reason. She's harness trained, so she's always on a lead. She doesn't get very far. But once she's been to, particularly when we go to places that are our safe spaces, she's kind of like, oh, we're here, okay. And then that's it, she sleeps. She'll settle and she's fine. So it's
I,
definitely.
I always find it interesting when I see a cat on a harness and a lead, because it's not normal. I mean, you normally see
No, it's
dogs.
not. It's not. I kind of I sort of say to people, yes, you can think of me as a crazy cat lady, but I have there's a reason for my craziness. But yeah, and then a lot of people are like, oh, I wish my cat would do that, because obviously, yeah, I know not all cats do, but it really does come down to, and I say this to people, it comes down to the temperament of the animal, and then also starting training as early as possible. So I equate it to, like, not all puppies born into the guide dogs breeding program go on to be guide dogs, because that they may not have the right temperament or personality. Everybody's unique and different, and it's the same with animals. I wouldn't ever, if I thought that it was starting to affect Amani negatively, to be going out and being my support animal, I would stop taking her out with me. I would look to get a new animal. But she loves it. She likes getting out and about and exploring, but she's also just as content to stay at home and sleep all day, as cats are wont to do.
Yeah. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about emotional support animals since getting one?
Just how surprised people are that emotional support animals are a thing. And also that the number of times I hear, but they're not legally recognised, and that's even coming from my local MP and the Cabinet Office for Disabled People. And I'm like, actually, if you read the Equality Act definitions for guide dog or for assistance dogs, which again only applies to taxis, like that's the only place that dogs are actually defined, and that's discrimination, because dogs are not the only sorts of assistance animals.
Yeah, but if you've got a hidden disability from your doctor and says you need the animal, so essentially you're covered by the Discrimination Act and all that, and the animal is actually a medical aid, just like a wheelchair or
exactly.
Yeah.
But my point being that they say, well, emotional support animals aren't legally recognised or defined, but they actually are in the 4 categories of assistance dogs. Because I went and I did a deep dive into all of the research. I contacted the UK Assistance Dog Association and so on, and I was like, could you just tell me where exactly, like give me, and they then pointed, I was like, but that's only for one section. But the 4 categories were guide dogs, dogs for the deaf, medical alert dogs for epilepsy and a couple of other things, and then D is any dog prescribed for a medical condition not covered in C above. I'm like, well, right there, that's emotional support animals.
Exactly.
Straight away.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think it's just that's been the most surprising, I think, particularly when the Cabinet Office and MPs who should know these things don't even know it.
The Cabinet Office, before the election, was holding a meeting with guide dogs, assistance dogs, and the emotional support organisation. But just as the meeting was about to be scheduled, they'd organised it all, obviously on Zoom. Then they had the election, and that stopped. So, no idea. It's been an ongoing thing. I've been talking to the people in the organisation, and every time they've talked to people, and example, health minister, and then gone through the process, and then with the Conservatives, then the leader changes, then all the cabinet changes, and then you got to start again.
Yeah.
And then it goes through, and then they've changed the leader again, and then started again. And then they've had an election which obviously it's a completely new lot of people, and then the process starts again. So it's just been non-stop. So anyway, are there any misconceptions about emotional support animals that you would like to clear up for our viewers?
They are just as important and just as valid as task-focused assistance animals. And just their very presence is enough. That's it. Like, it's that is what the benefit is of having them, is their very presence. They don't have to fetch my shoes. They don't have to take my socks off. They don't have to put laundry into the washing machine for me. I just need Amani there. And that in and of itself is enough to make life bearable. And to be able to put aside and overcome some of the anxieties and stresses that can actually become crippling and stop you from being able to do what you need to do to live.
Exactly. Compassion, comfort, and connection.
Yeah.
How does your emotional support animal help you manage specific symptoms of your hidden disability or condition?
So as I've mentioned a couple of times before, Amani is very emotionally attuned to me. And so she knows when I need her. She's not a lap cat, which is fine, because having fibromyalgia, I live in constant pain, and her sitting on me can be painful. So I'm quite happy that she's not a lap cat. However, she will, because she's not a lap cat, when she does want to come and sit on me, I've learned that there's a specific reason. She's obviously picked up on something within me that I'm there. So when she does that, I put everything down, phone goes down, TV goes off, and she comes and she will literally just lie on me, and she'll be there for 5 minutes. She can be there for half an hour. But once she's done that, I will actually feel better. I wouldn't have realized that I needed it, but by the end of it, I feel lighter, I feel better. When we're out in public, she'll meow at me, and she'll paw, or put her paw on me, which then just gives me the indication to just stroke her or to pay her attention, and just that brings me back into the moment. I think what a lot of people don't understand about anxiety, whether it be generalized anxiety, post-traumatic stress anxiety, social anxiety, is we're constantly threat assessing, and our brains don't always know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. Like to the brain, it's exactly the same thing. And for me, it's just learning how to rewire that so that I do feel safe. And Amani is a big part of that, because she will pick up on things, and by her bringing me back into the moment, I'm then telling my brain, we're safe. We don't have to be getting anxious. We don't have to go into fight or flight mode. We're okay. And that's huge for me.
We've covered some of this before, but how receptive have businesses and service providers in your town been towards your emotional support animal? Have you found certain places more accepting than others?
Yes, there are some places that are more accepting than others, particularly those that are dog friendly. I think they kind of mean animal friendly. A lot of people are interested, and they want to understand and know why I have Amani and that sort of thing. Particularly where I live now in Cranley, places are very, very open and receptive to having Amani with me.
Have you travelled with your emotional support animal yet?
We went to Wales in 2022.
Okay, did you face any specific challenges in that?
So I did actually, and I had a very good conversation with the person. So the hotel were great, no problems, didn't charge me extra for having Amani, because I know a lot of hotels will charge they'll be pet friendly and they'll charge extra for having pets. Because Amani was my emotional support animal, there was no extra cost to having her with me. We stayed in Clanbarris and wanted to go up the mountain on the train. And I'd gone and I'd said wanted Amani to come with me, and explained that she was my emotional support animal. The manager was like, well, we've just been through our whole accessibility process, and the EHRC sort of said that emotional animals aren't recognised. I had the conversation with him, explained my reasoning, showed him, the different things. He was like, "Oh, right, okay, that makes sense." And he then allowed me onto the train with Amani to go up. We were only going sort of halfway up at that point because they were doing work and stuff on the bit to the summit. But it was a conversation. It was we don't allow support animal. I showed him the registration documents of the ESA org that we have for Amani, and he was like, well, so many people will say no animals, and they'll leave and they'll come back the next day and say, oh well, it's an emotional support animal, but the dog's just not particularly well behaved and all of that sort of thing. So it was a great conversation to sort of see it from his side as well, and from a business perspective. But as I say, we had a very good conversation. He got me on a train, we went up the mountain, and then came back down and had a great time. So I think that for me is the biggest thing. It's not that you don't want to allow animals or that you don't allow animals. It's being open to the conversation and understanding why the person has the animal, for one, and then looking to see how we can make the reasonable adjustment work for everybody. It's not just a case of, well, you have to let my animal on, I don't care that it's going to cause upset for somebody else. No, I don't want to upset anybody else, because I know what it's like to have that anxiety, but I also don't want to be left out of being able to do things because you're too stuck in your ways of an ableist society.
What advice would you give to someone who is considering getting an emotional support animal?
Do your research. Do make sure that you get an animal that is right for you. I know, there are, you look at America and they've got emotional support turkeys and ducks and Shetland ponies, and I get that works and so on, and we have to be reasonable about things. I kind of joked about it with my therapist, because she'd never known about emotional support animals when I first started going to see her. So it was an education for her. She was like, if you came in here with your emotional support tarantula, I'm not sure I would be able to see you. Fair enough. And I kind of agree with her on that. Everybody's different. But, take into account that we live in a society that doesn't always understand or get what it means to have a disability. So make sure that you do that research really, really well. Make sure you get good, solid training for your animal. Even if they are just they're not needing to do task-based training, you still want to have your animal fully under control and not causing a riot, because the whole point of an emotional support animal is that they're calm, so that they can keep you calm. You don't want them running around. You're then trying to run around to keep the animal calm, and that's then causing a ruckus. And make sure to follow, get your doctor's support, or your psychiatrist, psychologist, mental health professional, whoever. Just get that support as well. Make sure that you follow, all of the guidelines and things that are set forth by the ESA, because they're there to make our lives as easy as possible, even if people don't fully understand it. Know how to advocate for yourself.
Following up on that, do you have any tips for managing the care and well-being of an emotional support animal, especially with people with hidden or disabilities or mental health challenges?
Again, when you're looking at the type of animal you're getting, I specifically went for a ragdoll, knowing that the care and upkeep of her fur was going to be a big thing, because she's long, she has long fur, she sheds. I joke with everybody, you will be leaving with a bit of her if you stroke her, because she just does. But that was one of the things I took into account, because it's like brushing her became a bonding moment for us, and is time for, it's therapeutic for me, that brushing her through, making sure she's looked after. And we know that gives us a reason to get out of bed, in the mornings, because our animals do need to then be looked after. They need feeding as much as we need feeding, and so on. And yeah.
Okay. Lastly, what's one thing you'd like people to understand or appreciate about emotional support animals that they might not realise?
Their very presence is the thing that is their most important, their biggest benefit, is just the animal being there. Amani and I did volunteer we did a year's volunteering for pets as therapy, going into care homes and so on, and even just seeing the reaction of particularly patients with dementia, just seeing Amani stroke Amani for a couple of minutes and the sheer joy on their face, that's what Amani brings to me every single day. And yeah, it's hard to explain it unless you've actually experienced it. I think people who've never had animals or have never known pets, like they may have had animals, but they've grown up on a farm and the dog has always been a working dog, or the cats are barn cats and they're there just to do a job of keeping rodents at bay. And until you've had a pet creep its way into your heart, I don't think you fully appreciate just how much of an impact they can have on your life.
Okay. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been much appreciated, and thank you all to those viewers watching the show. Please subscribe to the channel, and if you have not yet done so, hit the thumbs up, and of course share the video link on your social media. And again, Jannifer, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.